Hey YouTube family, welcome back to the channel. Today we are finally getting to the review of the movie Michael. Now, it's been a few days and I wanted the video to come out sooner, but I really wanted to get my thoughts together on some of the things about the movie. And not only did I go see it once on opening day, I went and saw it a second time on Saturday so that I could really absorb all that was going on within it. So we'll break down some of the basic things about it, and then we'll cut away to a spoiler section so we can go into more detail without ruining anything for those that have still not seen it yet. So on a surface level, as a fan, I went supporting my hoodie in honor of Michael, and as a fan, I thoroughly enjoyed myself. The movie I thought was fantastic. Not perfect, but very good. Now, I feel that this movie definitely feels somewhat of kind of like a love letter to the fans that loved and adored Michael, because it's definitely told with a certain level of maybe bias or favoritism towards Michael and his brothers, and they definitely did, really lean in hard portraying the father Joe as the bad guy in the movie. Not that there's a good or a bad guy, but they definitely leaned in hard on how tough he was on the boys growing up, because he was a bit of a tyrant, and of course they definitely leaned in hard on Michael being a significant victim of that, and how it traumatized him and affected his childhood, or in some people say resulted in him not really having one, and which led to him living a very different and eccentric type of life later on. But overall, as a fan, anybody who is a fan of Michael is going to go in watching this movie and just enjoying it for what it is. It's got all the music and the moves, the acting in this movie, I will say, from all the roles being portrayed, fantastic job. Jafar Jackson just knocked it out of the park. I understand that it's hard for me to give a very non-biased opinion, but I do feel that he did such a good job that I wouldn't be surprised if he gets nominated for an award of some kind. I'm not necessarily saying Oscar buzzed, but he should at least be recognized, because he did a fantastic job really emulating, what Michael not only looked like, but how he moved and how he carried himself and got the voice down and all of that. It was fantastic. The actor who played the father, Joe, also did a very good job. Everybody in the movie really did an outstanding job when it came to the acting. Now, obviously, the story begins when they were very young, Michael and his brothers, because they're really taking it back to the days of the Jackson 5s that evolve into the Jacksons, and then Michael launching his solo career, which turned into his first album, Off the Wall, and then Thriller, and Bad, and then so on and so forth. But I will say that, kind of like what I had predicted in my trailer reaction, the movie kind of ends right as the Bad tour is taking off. So there's clearly a lot more story to be told, and I almost kind of feel that that's why critics are being a little bit tough on the movie, is that it's not really a biopic in the sense that it's showing his entire life. So there's still tons of story to be told, and some may say they left out some of the more controversial times of his life, and so maybe they're trying to dodge a bullet, and maybe people are just taking that too seriously and being very hard when it comes to the rating of this movie. But it's all about his rise to fame, how he dealt with it. It was kind of nice to see some behind the scene moments, in the film, where he's talking to some, producers and things like that, trying to get some of those Michael stories on the screen, so you can actually feel and see maybe just how it was to be him. And I think they did a very good job with that. Yeah, everybody acted their asses off. I think it was fantastic. One odd thing is that I noticed that at different times of the movie, it felt like some of the music was a little out of place. Not that it was completely off-putting, but you might be having a scene to where he's during the time of his Thriller album, and instead of something that comes from that album, they're playing music from the Jackson 5 days. So there's some of those kinds of moments, but it didn't really, take away from the movie. It just, as a fan, I happened to notice it, and I was like, well, that's a little bit weird timing, but it was still a fantastic job. The moments to where they were capturing the actual performances, like his Motown 25 moment, or his Beat It album, or video, or Thriller video, when they were recreating those for the movie, did an awesome job. Like I said, Jafar Jackson really acted his ass off. You can tell that he studied, and that there is a bit of talent in the bloodline that shows through. But I highly recommend anybody going to see this. Obviously, this is going to appeal to the fans, very much so. It was very encouraging to sit in the theater and look around from time to time and watch people, bopping their heads and singing along, and I even saw a few get up and dance and stuff at certain times, and it was actually a lot of fun. It really brought an extra level of experience to the film, and the theater was crowded. It was pretty well filled, because I saw the first time at in the middle of the day, 1 o'clock, and then I saw the second time, it was in the evening, and it was definitely a lot more packed. But the movie was budgeted originally for I think 150 million or 155 million, and then they had to do another 50 million on the budget because they had to go back and do reshoots. Now apparently those reshoots were because they had some legality issues when it came to the estate and certain likenesses and things like that. So they must have had to go back and made some corrections and stuff like that for the sake of the film. So it was originally total probably budgeted only for about $200 million. And on opening weekend alone, I think they did about 220 million. So clearly the film is doing very well, and they surpassed their own budget within the first opening weekend. So I think that this film is going to make decent amount of money. There's already buzz in the air as far as a sequel goes, because there's so much more of his story to be told, and they even kind of left the door open, if you will, at the end of the film, and for a sequel if they decide to pursue that. But it'll be hard to say, because we know that if a sequel does come, they can't exclude the controversy and the drama and allegations that eventually come forward. And I don't know if that would be a good thing or a bad thing. I would like to see more, of course, as a fan, but I wonder if doing a sequel will leave a stain on either this movie or just his legacy in general. Even though, for these allegations and stuff, he was found not guilty, and nothing came of that. But we shall see. However, as I said, I highly recommend going out and seeing this movie. It was a joy to be a part of, seeing it on screen, hearing the music again, and watching, these people bring these, characters to life in a new way. And they did a bang up job. I really hope that they get credit for the outstanding acting that was done here. And yeah, with all that being said, I'll give it a final rating. And usually what I'll do is I'll go on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the best, of course, naturally. And I'm trying to be as fair about this as I possibly can because I know I am such a big fan. But as I said, and we'll get into it when we get to the spoiler section, the film is not perfect. But I would say I would give this a very enthusiastic 8 out of 10. I want to give it a higher score, but I feel it's only fair to deduct a couple of points for a couple things that I'll cover in spoilers. But there you have it, guys. A solid film. I would highly recommend going out and seeing it because it was a blast to be a part of. And if you are a Michael fan, you will not be disappointed, I'm sure. So those that are on the fence, I still think that you would enjoy it. But this is definitely something that Michael fans will definitely enjoy. And I already know that when it's available, I'm going to purchase it and make it part of my collection because I would love to go see it again. And for all I know, I may go see it again a couple more times at the theater before it leaves. But 8 out of 10 for me. And we'll get into the spoilers so we can talk more about it in detail. All right, stick around. All right, guys, thanks for sticking around and waiting for the spoiler section because this is the part to where we get to break it down and really pay close attention to the details of what was in the movie and what was not in the movie. So again, as much as I loved this movie, it's not perfect. And there are definitely things left out. And I'm going to start with probably the most noticeable thing for those that know anything about Michael or the family is that a lot of people don't remember that the Jacksons, Joe and Catherine, the parents, technically had 10 children. Now, for those that are trying to count the number of children here, well, I'll give you an update. Brandon was one that is not always remembered because Brandon was, I think it was Marlon's twin at birth, and he apparently passed shortly after birth or during childbirth, something like that. So let's just say 9 children. Okay, well, for those of you that have seen the movie, when you count them up, there's really only 6 being portrayed. You had the 5 brothers, and then you had LaToya. So we actually were left out having Rebby and Randy and Janet. Now, after doing a little bit of research, which is the reason why the review is coming out a few days later than I would have wanted it to, is that from what I can gather, some of the family weren't all completely on board with what was being portrayed or how it was being portrayed, or they felt that there were certain inaccuracies and things like that. So Janet completely opted out. Now, it would have been different if they were just maybe in a different room of the house or something like that, but they didn't do that. There was literally no mention of Janet or the others. So it was literally like they were just completely deleted out of history and deleted out of the family. So that was a little off-putting, but I was willing to let that go just because everything else was still very satisfying and very well done. But it was still hard to not notice the fact that you got LaToya there and you're just like, where's Janet? So not a lot of people remember Rebby or Randy, maybe so much, but Janet is always a very popular one because she had a fantastic solo career herself. But so they left them out, 3 siblings, which I feel is a big deal. I did actually enjoy a couple of these scenes where you had Michael with his agent, and another interesting surprise was that we had an appearance by Mike Myers portraying a CBS executive, and they had a meeting, and apparently, I guess his name was Walt or something, and the whole scene is basically broken down to where Michael is trying to get on MTV, and at that point in time, apparently all the videos that were being shown were white artists, and black artists really weren't shown at all, unless of course it was really, really late at night, and Michael was trying to break through a barrier and had to consult with the Michael Myers character, Walter. And that was a cool scene because, you know, there was a little bit of comedy, but it wasn't like, you know, comedy. It was just a couple of lines that made you chuckle. So that interesting scene was cool to watch. The other one that I appreciated was when they were describing and talking about how the inspiration of the song Beat It came to be, which was a lot of the gang violence that was being done during that time between the Crips and the Bloods and stuff like that. And I had never even realized just how much that influenced his choice in that song, and how he actually brought some of the Crips and some of the Bloods together and had them dancing and filmed in the background of the actual video itself. Very cool stuff. The other thing that I appreciated was the recreation of the Thriller video. I did find out that they actually went back to the original location to where Thriller was originally filmed with Michael, and recreated the entire scene again. Now, it's not the entire video, of course, but it's definitely a really good portion where you know, he's dancing with the zombies in the streets and stuff like that, and Jafar was just killing it. You know, I actually watched a clip of Jafar's portrayal and the original side by side, and just mimicked it almost to perfection. It was so good, so well done. But so those were very fun to watch, some of these Michael type stories. Now, the thing about this movie I feel that critics are being hard on is that when it comes to Michael or the Jacksons, the story is a little bit light, in the sense that there's no surprises. You know, we know that they, you know, were worked to death by their father. We know that he was a tyrant. We know that Michael was an innocent young boy who grew up and then launched a solo career. We know the gist of these things. So for some people, the story isn't really compelling, and it felt at times a bit rushed, or, you know, jammed together, because one moment you're in 1968 and then you're in 1971, and now you're, you know, moving on at what it kind of felt like a fast pace. But again, you kind of forgive it because you want to see Michael as an adult. Not to mention the fact, I keep talking about the acting, but even the young boy that plays Michael as a young boy did a great job. The acting was superb. Really did a bang up job on the acting, all the people playing their roles. But yeah, the timing of the movie at times felt a little rushed, but like I said, I was willing to forgive it a little bit, because you knew that you kind of wanted to get to the meat and potatoes of the story, which is, I want to see Michael launching his career, because we've seen and heard all the stories about him, you know, being manipulated by Joe, and Joe being the slave driver, and Michael being abused or whatever. And we just wanted to see, you know, Michael kind of launch his career and rise to stardom and get to some of the hits that we all, you know, fell in love with. And it didn't disappoint. Those moments were really cool. Watching him, you know, find inspiration for music and things like that was, I think, very well portrayed. But it is interesting that some of the family, even his own daughter, Paris, has come out and has said that she feels that there's a lot of inaccuracies being told. And I wouldn't be surprised by that, because it is a movie, so it might not be 100% accurate. And you also sometimes have to question the timing of these instances. Like, for example, early on in the movie, when they were still young doing the Jackson 5 stuff, they got a gig for the first time, and they go out and do their gig and performed for a live audience and did very well. And then they come home and they're all celebrating and happy and this and that, and the boys are taking their coats off and stuff like that, and Joe's just like, hey, go break out the instruments, we got practice to do. And everybody's like, hey man, we're tired and this and that. And Joe said, well, it wasn't perfect, we're going to practice till we get it right, and so I don't care, whatever. And then, you know, Michael said something, and then Joe snatched him up and started whooping him with a belt and things like that. So it's a scene like that you call into question, is that accurate? Did that moment actually take place? Now, we know that they performed, and we know that Michael was potentially abused, but did that happen that night right after their first gig? Or is that just dramatized for the effect of it? So to some people, that might not matter. And to some degree, it doesn't even matter to me, but I try to pay attention to those types of things, and I think that's noteworthy. But it was really, really fun to watch, and I think that it's going to do very well. As I said in the previous section, it's already surpassed its budget on opening weekend. It's already set records that it's the highest grossing biopic ever so far on opening weekend. We'll see what it grows to currently, because over opening weekend, I think it did about 220 million internationally. So I don't know what it is up to now. Yeah, and they're trying to figure, you know, from the budget, the original budget compared to what it made. So right now it's on pace for doing you know, some record numbers, I think, and I think it's only going to grow. I don't know if it's going to end up being $1 billion movie, but we shall see. But yeah, I think that I wasn't disappointed. I don't think that there would be too many people, as far as regular people, be disappointed by this movie. The critics do seem to be a little bit hard on it, and I do feel that it's because of there's so much story left to be told for him, and even at the end of the movie, when it talks about it fades to black as he's walking out, or he does a performance of bad and then kind of covers his face and whatever, and then it fades to black, and then it says his story continues or something like that, and you're just kind of like, are they loading up, you know, for a sequel? But again, part of me is kind of like, I just don't know if I want that. I just don't know if a sequel is a good idea. But who knows? Maybe they'll be able to find a way to tell a good story in a sequel, because from what I understand, they, during the course of the time of shooting this movie, recorded an additional like 3 to 4 hours worth of content with Jafar, and that's why they had to do the $50 million worth of reshoots, because they had to cut so much out because certain things and certain people didn't want to be portrayed in the movie. So after they consulted the estate and the family members and stuff like that, and found out that they had to reshoot some of these things, there you have it. Got to budget more money for reshoots and all that. So a lot of that stuff ended up on the cutting room floor, and they're already saying that they could potentially use some of that material in a sequel, and it'll just be interesting to see if they can. You know, maybe the movie will make enough money that will push the directors and producers and stuff like that to push for a sequel, and maybe they'll be able to tell the story in a, you know, an honorable way. But only time will tell, and I would definitely be up for at least seeing what they might be able to bring to the screen. But I definitely would not want it to tarnish his legacy in any kind of form or fashion. But I think that's pretty much kind of all I've got to say about the film. I, of course, have loved it. I encourage others to go see it at the theater because I think it was a fun experience. Seeing it on screen, listening to the music, watching the fans in the audience, because that definitely added to the experience for me and all of that. But I thoroughly enjoyed it. And like I said, my heart wants to give it a 9. It's definitely not a 10, but my heart kind of wants to give it a 9. But I'm settling, like I said, with my score from before. 8 out of 10 I think is more than fair, even though the critics are really hitting it hard, and I think it's ranging around 30 or 40% or something like that, which is crazy to me because I thought it was a very well done film. But maybe they're looking at things that I'm not looking at because I'm only looking at it from a fan's point of view, and that's fair. I'm trying to be as objective as I possibly can, at least I think so. However, I'm interested in what you guys thought of the movie, so don't forget to leave your comments down below and we can talk about it, as well as leave suggestions on things that you'd like to see from the channel in the future. There's definitely a lot more content planned to come out, and so make sure that you like and subscribe and ring the bell so when that content does drop that you're not missing any of that. Okay? However, until then, I'll see you guys in the next video. X out.